Go.
Yep.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bad Bear Enterprises, home of my grandmother's recipe. We sell Sextro Rye and Iowa Legendary Rye in Carroll, Iowa, and today's video is all about bringing you into our little bootlegger's lair to let you see what we do that nobody else does. So follow me on in. So anytime you come, if you want to get in, you just ring the doorbell. Max, our guy who's doing our filming, comes to the door and we do impromptu tours pretty much every day of the week as long as we're not cooking the world's finest rye. And as you come in the door, we actually took the time to take a piece of a barn out of Templeton, Iowa. This is my grandfather's signature from somewhere in the 1920s, 1930s, at the barn, at the house where everything took place. This is actually a piece of American history. And you can see this burn mark right up the wall. This is actually a burn mark from my grandmother's still when she cooked a world famous rye recipe that went on to become Al Capone's favorite recipe. A real exciting part of, again, American history. Come on in and we'll show you the rest of the place. So here we have my grandmother's still. We actually hired a team of dogs, cadaver dogs, to film and to find barrels. And rather than finding barrels, we found a still, but a really exciting piece of, yet again, American history, found in the yard where they lived. And thanks to Whiskey Rich, he put it back together. This is basically a classic form of what that distilling looked like during Prohibition, Templeton, Iowa. So today we're going to take you through our entire lineup, and we're going to go over here and go through the entire lineup of Iowa Legendary Rye and Sextro Rye products. So what you see here, we've got a total of 7 expressions, and I'm going to go through all of them. But the most important part for you to realize is that the recipe is exactly the same throughout the lineup. So the recipe never changes. The North Star of what is done here is that we're trying to make a product that if we could create a time machine and ship you back to 1932, and you could try rye during Prohibition on the streets of Chicago, that you would say, hey, I've already tried that. It's Iowa Legendary Rye, it's Sextro Rye. So many people ask us, why Iowa Legendary Rye and Sextro Rye? And candidly, Iowa Legendary Rye is usually our Iowa recipe, our Iowa brand. And when I say our, my official title is Bootlegger's grandson, so I'm somewhat of a mascot here. But I also endear to her because, it's my grandparents, Frank and Lorene Sextro, who made liquor during Prohibition in Templeton, Iowa, about March 1932. And this little lady right here was doing that while she was pregnant with my Aunt Shirley and just doing what she had to do to feed her children. So she wasn't a gangster. She was more of a mother who did what she had to do, and she was brought on to make that recipe on the farm. And what she did was in a barn using a still very similar to this, which is a 6-gallon pot that yields 1 gallon of product, made enough product for about 6 to 8 months to feed her kids, to make for a nice Christmas in 1932. I specifically remember my Aunt Shirley saying the Christmas of 1932, they got new boots and new pants for Christmas, which was a big deal when you were trying to just get by. So moving back to the line, again, it's exactly the same recipe throughout, 4 simple ingredients. And what's really neat about what we do, and when I say we, again, Bootlegger's grandson, company, CEO, not me, definitely not me. But what's cool about what we do is we're the only rye in the world made without chemicals. Every other rye you'll ever taste, you're going to notice that it's got a black pepper and a black licorice taste. And most people don't like rye because of that black pepper and black licorice taste. Well, what I'm going to contend to you is the reason it tastes like black pepper, the reason it tastes like black licorice, is because that rye has been chemically burnt. And rye is a very particular grain. Unlike corn, wheat, barley, which can stand up to chemistry, stand up to being plied with alpha amylase and beta amylase, and all the other chemistry processes they do to beat their grains up, rye does not like chemistry. And rye is very picky, and if you burn it, it tastes burnt. So we have many people tell us, man, I just don't like rye. And I always tell them, that's because the only rye you've ever tasted has been burnt. Just like you don't like burnt toast, but you like toast, you would also like our rye because it's the only rye in the world made without chemicals. Now the reason for that is because, yet again, we're doing a 1932 recipe. Actually originated in 1920. My family was one of approximately 15 families that made rye in Templeton during Prohibition, and these guys have the only surviving recipe from that time and place. And guess what? They didn't have chemicals in 1932. So that's why this recipe is so unique and something you should definitely try, because I guarantee you this, you've never had anything like this. It is unlike any other rye. It drinks better, it feels better, and you'll find it to be very bourbon-esque as far as flavors, because we allow the rye to be the beautiful wintergreen grain that it is, and we allow that rye to ferment for up to 28 days, where other distilleries take about 28 hours because they're beating that grain up. They're breaking it down with chemistry, and as you know, all the chemistry in foods is really being uncovered to be bad. And we also contend that it's bad, but that's not this. This is actually made 3 gallons at a time. So let me put that in perspective for you. Most distilleries, when they say small batch, they're doing it at least 1,000 gallons at a time, if not 10,000 gallons at a time, versus 3 gallons at a time. So when other distilleries say small batch, we all kind of chuckle, because small batch is not 1,000 gallons. You cannot control quality in thousands of gallons at a time. The way you control quality, the way you can keep your hands on exactly what's happening, is 3 gallons at a time. And we'll never do anything but 3 gallons at a time. So let's move on to the actual expressions. Now that you understand what we're doing that's unique, keep in mind also the rye that we use is purpose-grown rye. We're the only ones who use this rye, and it's grown right here in Carroll County, Iowa. It's an organic rye. The fields have been certified organic, so there's no herbicides, no pesticides, and it's a very specific rye that gets us the flavor profile that we're seeking. So not only do we make our own stills, grow our own rye, and make our products 3 gallons at a time, all in the spirit of high quality, but we also take the time to keep everything small, handcrafted, and exactly the way it was done in 1932, when chemicals were not a thing, when hurrying was not a thing, and when quality was everything. So let's talk about the expressions. You'll notice all the medals on these bottles. So we quit competing in 2022. After, you get all these medals, all these accolades, have so many people, calling out to us saying that we're an extremely exceptional product, we quit competing. We've actually never entered a contest where we haven't medaled. And again, I say we, me being the mascot, and Max and Lisa being the actual company. But what's cool about this, because the recipe is exactly the same, we feel like the metals for this versus this versus this versus this versus this, it's all the same because the recipe never changes. The only thing that changes is what these guys do to it after it comes out of the still. Which leads us to the first expression. I'm going to pull these metals off and place them back as we go. Again, over 30 international accolades. So, the first expression is white label. Now, I always get a kick out of white label because with most buyers, you can't get them to try white label. They've been burnt one too many times. You know, it's just, most people's white label is sadly absolutely heinous. And what I like about our white label, and this is the Iowa Legendary Rye label, is number one, it's very reasonably priced, but number two, it folds into juices like no other clear spirit you've ever had. In fact, this particular expression, white label, won the LA Spirits competition and was listed as product of the category for clear spirits. This same expression was scored as a 93 in Cigar and Spirits magazine, one of the highest scores in the history of a clear spirit. And this actually took a second place in a whiskey contest without even seeing a barrel. So I always tell people, making white, clear product without a barrel, because the barrel creates the color, is like swimming in the swimming pool without swimming trunks. You either got it or you don't. And I'm telling you, when you try this, even when buyers try this, they say, wow, I've never had anything like that. And this is our foundation of everything we do. And we're very proud of this. We challenge any liquor manufacturer to show their white label because you can't hide behind a barrel. A barrel filters and it adds flavors and it can cover up mistakes. Candidly, there's no mistakes in this bottle. This bottle is perfect. And if you ever take the time to come to Carroll, Iowa, see how we do this, Max, who's our filming guy today, will take the time to fire up a still if you give us a couple hours notice, and we've got something ready to cook. And you can actually sample this as it comes off the still at 155 proof, and it tastes like buttered bread. It smells like bread. These guys actually use Fleischmann's bread baker's yeast to make rye. It's a very low yield yeast, but it's also a very buttery and delicious yeast. So just like my grandma did in 1932, we use Fleischmann's yeast because that's exactly the way it was done when my grandmother was making what Al Capone said was his favorite recipe. Now there's been many claims to that, but if you ever look at an Iowa PBS special, first 1 minute of the Iowa PBS special lists our recipe. Water, sugar, rye, yeast, the 4 ingredients that made Templeton, Iowa famous. And that's what you see here. And it's in its purest form. And again, absolutely delicious by itself. Delicious at 155 proof. And if you come to the distillery, they actually have flavors that they sell. And this folds into lemonade, it folds into a Bloody Mary, folds into peach. They offer all of those expressions, but because no chemistry, no pesticides, no herbicides, and more importantly, no preservatives, we can't serve that to you outside of the factory because it needs to be refrigerated. It's real food. So definitely take a trip here. Tell him Heath sent you, the bootlegger's grandson. Max will take you out for a run around the place, show you how we make what we make, and offer you the opportunity to buy the most tasty flavored liquor products in the world. So moving away from no barrel, our next expression is new barrel. New barrel has beautiful color. So please note, absolutely no additives, no color added, that's very unusual. No flavors added, yet again, highly unusual. And again, still made 3 gallons at a time. I think this is actually, Max, this is your favorite, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's cool about Black Label is it's got a real beautiful smoky finish because we level 5 char Minnesota white oak. Now what's cool about Minnesota white oak is it's a very wet oak, so it's got a lot of cellulose content. So we level 5 char that barrel because it's got so much personality that you need to level 5 char it to get that smoke, and you also want that spice, that traditional spice, not the black licorice or the black pepper spice, but the actual rye spice. It's different. So again, if you ever have anybody say, I don't like rye, you need to tell them you don't like burnt rye, because this is the only rye in the world that is not burnt. And the reason this has won over 30 international spirits awards is because not burning rye is the key to making good rye. And these guys make 100% rye. So it's not just difficult, it's almost impossible for most places. And if you don't know Grandma Lorene's recipe, you can't make this. But this, great sipper, great on an ice cube, and fantastic in an old fashioned. This is actually served in some of the finest restaurants and bars in the United States. Places such as the Broadmoor in Colorado, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Barry's Prime in Las Vegas, South Point, Las Vegas, Westgate, Las Vegas. Some of the nicest restaurants out in California, High Times in Newport Beach, serves this product as a special order. So if you get a chance, go out and find this. And remember, it's served as Iowa Legendary Rye or Sextro Rye. Same juice. Difference being, Sextro Rye is our international brand. Iowa Legendary Rye is our Iowa brand. If we have a distributor that likes the concept of Iowa Legendary Rye, we don't steer which brand a distributor sells, but we have had experiences where Iowa Legendary Rye being sold in Nebraska, well, if the state of Iowa basketball football team beats the state of Nebraska basketball football team, nobody buys Iowa Legendary Rye for the next 12 months. So that's where we came up with Sextro Rye. And Sextro is the family name. It is not a pseudonym. It's actually what the family name was. It dates out of Germany. And my great-grandfather, Barney Sextro, was one of the founders of Templeton, Iowa. I'm sure you've all heard of Templeton. I'm sure you're all familiar with rye. Don't be confused by the brand that uses those words, because that's actually an Indiana product using a story that doesn't belong to them. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see the world, they had to pay a $5 million deceptive trade practice deal. We weren't any part of that, but they were forced to change their label. Now, in very fine print, they mention a product made in Indiana. And I can tell you this, if you're looking for the rye that made Templeton, Iowa famous and was known as the good stuff, was known as Al Capone's favorite gift, because a lot of people don't realize Al Capone did not drink that much, this is it. If you could, again, be shipped back in time, put on the streets of Templeton, Iowa, St. Louis, Missouri, Denver, Colorado, Chicago, Illinois, this was what you would try if you were fortunate enough to be gifted it, because it was very hard to find. So moving on to the next expression. Again, same recipe, red label. This is actually my personal favorite. No offense, Max. Also Whiskey Rich's favorite. Not that he drinks anymore, but if he were to drink, this is his favorite. So this is a used barrel. Now what's cool about what they do here is they use 15-gallon cask, not 53. 53 is a modern day version. 15 is a Prohibition era version. And if you ever look at pictures of Prohibition, you'll notice in the background when they were busting places, it's all 15-gallon barrel. And think about it. Why would it be 15-gallon barrel? Well, I can tell you why. 53-gallon barrels weigh 550 pounds. They didn't have forklifts. They didn't have a lot of heavy equipment. So 550 gallons is 100% unmanageable versus 15-gallon barrel, which is exactly what we use. One of the few to use that, 15-gallon barrel is manageable. It's 220 pounds. One can actually pick that up. It was alleged that one could pick it up and run with it. Definitely have to be a farm boy to do that. But nonetheless, our whole North Star is to offer you something you can't get anywhere else, and something that's exactly the way it was done when this became regionally and world famous. So getting back to that thought, during Prohibition, you didn't throw anything away. So they would use their barrels 5 times. So we do the same. We use it 1 time with the black label, and then we use it 2, 3, 4, and 5th time for red label. The beauty of that, yet again, look at the color, still beautiful color, no color added, no additives, no preservatives, but this is all just rye and barrel. And the beauty of 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th use is you get deeper into the cellulose. Now the char is not as prevalent, and you get a sweet, soft, easy to approach liquor that I would contend is the smoothest, most gentle whiskey. Remember, whiskey 1932, not whiskey today, that you'll ever taste. And I can tell you, I actually have friends on the golf course that if I didn't have this, they wouldn't be my friends. But always invited along. This rarely gets brought home. 4 guys, bitch that bottle. But absolutely delicious. Something that, even if you don't like whiskey, you don't like rye, you should try this. It's exceptional. It's delicious. And price-wise, this sits on the shelf for somewhere between $39 and $45. Unbelievable price for something made 3 gallons at a time. Okay, moving from no barrel, new barrel, used barrel. Our most recent creation is Copper Label. And Copper Label is actually cask strength black and cask strength red, blended 50-50. Isn't that a beautiful label? We just got these labels, and I think that's absolutely gorgeous. But what's cool about this is you get the smoke and the spice of this, you get the sweetness and the softness of this, and you get it in a proof. These are all 80, 80, 80. This proofs out at somewhere between 90 and 100, depending on what those barrels yielded. Because again, we're not adding anything. So it is what it is. But our response to this has been phenomenal. We've actually had, just in the month that it's been available, we've had Cantina Liquors up by Fort Collins, Colorado, bring in a barrel. We've had Rio Grande in Colorado bring in a barrel for their members, going to be handed out as a gift. And if you stop into the distillery or you ask for it at your local stores, you can get this in this proof, and it's absolutely delicious. Again, the best attributes of both for about $50. A hell of a deal for a 90 proof, 3 gallons at a time, unadulterated, 100% rye recipe. And a beautiful bottle for your back bar. You'll notice that's a Sextro rye. You notice these say Iowa, Iowa, Iowa. We're indifferent to the label, we're indifferent to the brand, we're open to the distributor's preference. Same juice, to a certain extent. Meaning that when you combine 2 15-gallon barrels, those 2 15-gallon barrels are unique to themselves. They are, as a matter of description, a snowflake. So no 2 barrels are exactly the same. Although the recipe is the same, the process is the same. Every time you take 2 barrels and marry them together, they're unique, similar, but not the same. And highly encourage you to try this. This product, this will probably be our most popular product as we move forward. An unbelievable price considering the quality, the taste, and the combination of these 2 beautiful expressions we've had huge success with. All right, moving on. Gold label. Man, that's a lot of metal, by the way. So gold label is actually black barrel, red barrel, purple barrel. Now we haven't talked about Purple Barrel yet, but it's our high proof expression. So what's beautiful about this is, as I've said before, black has some very unique attributes, red has some very unique attributes, and purple has some very unique attributes. But the way we go into our high proof products, 100 plus proof, is we throw in purple. And we'll talk about purple in just a second. But the reason for this is because we think this has unique attributes, this has unique attributes, this, nobody can make this. We'll again talk about it in a second. But what's cool about this is by combining the three, we get the attributes of all three expressions, and yet we keep the price a little less intense than the purple label. And here's what's cool about this. So we actually competed in a blind barrel contest. Blind barrel is basically where they take 4 different liquor products, send them out to their group, their subscribers, and then their subscribers pick the one they like the most, and they can buy it once they find out what it is. This product, September 2023, was picked 8 out of 10 times, the most lopsided blind barrel in the history of blind barrel, and competed against an 18-year, a 6-year ocean-aged, and an 8-year bourbon. And this product, what you see right here, was picked 8 out of 10 times, the most lopsided blind barrel in the history of blind barrel. One of the people who tried this, the guys on Bourbon Junkies, and it was Iowa Legendary Ride. Again, don't be confused, Sextra Ride, Iowa Legendary Ride, same thing. But one of the two guys that got to try this were the guys at the Bourbon Junkies. And the Bourbon Junkies, and I loosely quote, said this is a must-have. That if you can find this, you should buy it. They've never had anything like this. And if they had to tell you what it was, and their life depended on it, neither of them would be with us right now. Highly unusual, beautiful flavor, 103 proof, just recently invented again. Our blending has been something we've been coming up with lately. This right here is a sensation. Something that we do sell in the factory, the distillery, and something that we do sell to our distributors on special order. So if you see this, buy it. It's available in the Denver market. It's available in the Nevada market. It will be available online on our website, iowalegendaryrye.com, sextros.com, or you can find it on shelves in bars in a lot of locations. But seriously, if you get a chance to see this, absolutely delicious, like nothing else you've ever had. And even people who've got decades of experience in tasting say this is like nothing they've had, and absolutely delicious. And at 103 proof, it's got a nice heat on the back of it, not on your throat, on your tongue. Always keep in mind with high proof, all high proof, although not true of all high proof should be hot on your tongue where a jalapeno hits your tongue, not hot on your throat. Hot on your throat is chemicals. It's your body saying, yuck, do not put that in me. Hot on your tongue is food-like. Just like if you like spicy food, you'll usually like high-proof liquor. And this hits that tongue perfectly and builds flavor forward. It's like nothing you've ever experienced. I highly suggest you try to find this if you can. And last but not least, Purple Label. So Purple Label is 6 generations of bootlegging. Well, make that 5 generations of bootlegging because Max is our first legal bootlegger. Yet again, Max is 32 now, Max?
Yep.
Okay, so Max at 32, by my estimate, has over 25,000 hours of cooking, which is shocking for a guy his age. Thank God we got him early. He's learned from Whiskey Rich, who was an illegal bootlegger, so that's our 5th generation. And Whiskey Rich got his recipe from my grandma. He actually sought my grandma out in an old folks home to get his bootlegging recipe accurate to Templeton, Iowa, 1930s, 1920s. And they knew they didn't have it right. So when Whiskey Rich found my grandma, they went out and corrected the recipe so that it's exactly the way it was made back then. And my grandmother, for lack of a better description, was an OG. You know, one of the original people who made this recipe so she could tell him exactly what was right and wrong. We actually still have the letter from her listing out the recipe with a few exclusions because she didn't want her kids making liquor. But back to the point, Purple Label is 5-6 generations of distilling experience, over 100 years of combined experience of how to take a product that goes wrong and make it right. Let me tell you how that works. So to make purple, we have to take perfectly good Black Label, 3 barrels, redistill, and put it back in a barrel. Now with most distilleries, if you redistill, you end up with NGS, natural grain spirits, because their stills are like a chainsaw and our stills are like a scalpel, completely different. And the reason ours are different is because they're made to make very small batch. So Max can control them through water temperature control, through listening to the stills, listening to the antique marbles, the copper inserts, the pot reflux. These things, we actually machine our own flute. So not only is our recipe one of a kind, but our stills are one of a kind. And that flute is a magical flute in that it creates a product that when we redistill, the flavor stays behind, put it back in a new barrel, put it back in the rickhouse, and after it ages, 3 barrels of black comes out as purple. And again, look at that color. This is deep, dark, syrupy, high proof magic. And I challenge anyone to try to do this. It's absolutely impossible. But what's neat about it is it goes in the barrel and comes out somewhere between 159 proof and 139 proof. We actually water it down to 121.1 proof for our regular shelf offer. And this is the king or queen of high proof. I challenge any high proof, and I do mean any high proof, to try to compare to this. It'll be your funeral, because there's nothing that drinks like this. There's nothing that tastes like this. It's got heat, it's got caramel, it's got butterscotch, it's got berries. And that's all because of 2 barrels, 2 distillations, thrown back in the rickhouse, aged in outdoor storage containers, so it gets the steam, it gets the cold, it gets all the beauty of the Iowa weather, the humidity. And this right here, I think there's 25 barrels of this in the world right now, Max?
Yep.
25. So that's about 1,200 bottles. Maybe 2,300 bottles, somewhere in that. Doing some bootleggers math here. But nonetheless, highly unusual, very exclusive, and I contend that you won't actually be able to get this as this becomes more and more popular, because anybody who likes high proof, anybody, and I've put this in front of some of the most discriminating buyers in the world, they taste this and they're like, that is absolutely amazing. I've never had anything like it. And if that doesn't tickle your fancy as a high proof drinker, check this out. So this is cask strength purple. 150 proof plus. How many barrels of 150 proof we have in the rickhouse, Max? Like 8, 9?
Yeah.
Okay. And make that 6 or 7. Because we just sold 2 of these into the Colorado market. We allocated 2 barrels for the entire state of Colorado. They've already been purchased. They're going to be at Bevy's in Littleton, and they're going to be at Lucas in Colorado. The only 2 153 proof purple sold out into the market, other than High Times out in Newport. I think they have 156 or 159 proof, I can't remember. But we actually custom label these, and take note of this, any buyers out there. So we do custom labels, and what's cool about custom label is we actually put your logo up here. We can put your information here, keep ourselves TTB compliant by keeping this extra rye and the required stuff that goes on the bottle. But if you can get a hold of this 153 proof, this is unseen, unheard of, hard to find, not cheap. But seriously, if you want to impress your friends, if you want to experience something you've never had, may never be able to get if you wait too long, we do custom label on the entire lineup. No upcharge for custom label. It's just a barrel buy, so 60 bottles at cask strength, 72 bottles at 80 proof. You can get your billing here so that your barrel stands out as your barrel, while we keep it TTB compliant with our billing. And you'll have a one-of-a-kind product of black label, red label, copper label, gold label, or purple label. And you want to talk about impressing your friends. When you roll out 153 proof Bootlegger's recipe, 3 gallons at a time, double distilled, double barrel, nobody does that. And I don't care what you're comparing it to. Bring out any high proof your friends have ever had. They're going to be blown away by this. This will be impossible to find. I can tell you just through my experience with buyers right now that wait too long and you won't get this at any price. So it is available right now in the Colorado market, in the Newport Beach market, in the Las Vegas market. And if you're interested in carrying a cult sensation high proof, this is high proof, that's high proof, this is high proof. But please note, purple cask strength, if you don't get on it, you probably never get it. So that concludes our entire lineup. Remember, again, recipe exactly the same throughout. It's just barrel play, still play, blending, no blend, high proof, double distilled, double barrel. And I'm telling you something. This product, this piece of American history is something that even if you don't drink, because the way I got involved with this place is before I got involved with this place, I didn't drink. No beer, no wine, and definitely no liquor. I didn't like the way it made me feel. But let me tell you something else. When I came here and sampled, and I got to try the flavors, and I got to try the red label, I tied a little one on, you know. It was nice to not be in that group of, well, I don't drink because I feel like garbage anytime I drink. Let me tell you something. That I don't feel well, I don't drink, is in large part not the alcohol, but the chemistry. Anytime any product is made, and they're kind of teaching you this in food now, and it's made through processes, through chemistry, through labs, your body rejects it. That's why you feel so bad. I one time heard in an ad, Jose Cuervo specifically saying, tomorrow's overrated. Well, if you're anything like me, tomorrow's priceless. And you wouldn't mind having a little sip, a little drink or two. You know, we always encourage people to drink responsibly. Nobody should be drinking a bottle of liquor. But if you're like me, and your tomorrow is priceless, and you want to have a drink, and you want to have a little sunshine on your forehead, this is it. And it's one of one. So go out and find it, or better yet, stop into the distillery and meet Max. See how we do it. Taste it. Free samples. Tell him Heath sent you. And we sure thank you for taking the time to listen to this video, And if you have any questions, we're at 707 North Main in Carroll, Iowa. I can be reached at heath@gobadbear.com. Again, not officially with the company, more of a mascot, Bootlegger's grandson, financier. But we absolutely welcome you to come check out a piece of American history, enjoy what we make, And we thank you so much for taking the time to hear us out.